Welcome back to What Matters This Week. I'm Lauren Maloney. Joining us this Sunday is House Speaker Mitzi Johnson. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me, Lauren.
The end of the session is almost here, a few weeks or so. I understand this week and next possibly will be very busy. What are you hoping to fit in? Some of your main goals?
Well, our biggest priorities are the budget is an easy one. We have to have that and have been working hard on that. And in terms of some of the policy, environmental issues like clean water and some really important economic issues like workforce development and things that really help our workforce like minimum wage and paid family leave. Those are some of the big pieces that are in play right now.
You mentioned clean water. The House Ways and Means passed a funding proposal recently on that.
Yes.
What else will be included in that package?
So the bill is just getting wrapped up in the House. We have, I guess the two big issues there were a funding source and a way to distribute the money. When we first did our sort of a big push towards cleaning up waterways of the state, we came up with a kind of a pot of money that was unspent from other projects. So it was millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars that we were able to put together to say, okay, this is what's going to get us started, and we're going to look for a sustainable funding source. And one of the issues we found in that is that we need a better way to get that money out at a regional level to the projects that are going to have the biggest bang for their buck, keep the most phosphorus out of our waterways for the least amount of money. So that bill, in addition to a funding source, also sets up a distribution system that is a more regional system so that it's not one size fits all for the whole state, and it's really looking at what projects are shovel ready in your area right now.
Similar to how the state just kind of revamped or released this dashboard system where you can, look for Rutland, look for South Burlington, and see where some of those clean water projects are working and what they've done so far. Something similar?
It's more than a dashboard at the state level. It's actually getting money out to regional groups who are making some of those decisions.
Okay.
So it's a much more regional distribution method. The other piece is that that while most of it is still focused on the impaired waterways of the state and the Lake Champlain Basin, there's an important provision that says, you know what, we've got some waters that aren't yet impaired, and we've got to make sure to maintain those waters and not let them become degraded, because it would be a shame to let other waterways get more polluted while we're focused on the already polluted ones. So we've got to kind of have our focus in both places, really.
Okay. You had mentioned paid family leave. This is a big talker around the state, has been for some time, nationally as well. But before we go local, Melinda Gates recently this week on CNN said when it comes to paid parental leave or family leave, research shows if the man participates early, he participates more over the child's lifetime. Are you finding similar research factors?
I'm not sure that we've stumbled across that particular research factor yet, but that's an excellent one, because we really need, as both parents involved in households where there's a mom and a dad. There are all kinds of family combinations in the state, and so this bill really helps to accommodate for all of those, whether that's a same-sex couple, whether it's a foster situation, an adoption, or the birth of a child. And this bill is not only about bonding, that's a really important part of that, not only bonding to help with those family dynamics for the child's lifetime, but it's a huge transition in a young family's life. And so giving them time to settle into that and giving them time to find childcare, easing them of the expense of those childcare expenses those first 3 months are also very helpful. This bill also allows for leave to take care of a sick spouse or a sick parent. And at times when workforce is so tight and we're trying to develop a workforce where people can participate more fully, it's really important to have ways for people to not have to choose between work and family obligations.
We know Governor Scott has his own plan, his twin state partnership that he announced with Governor Sununu. Do you anticipate that there might have to be some compromise, some late nights when it comes to hashing this out?
So I think we've actually taken a big step towards compromise already in trying to figure out how to work with an insurer to administer the program. The governor was clear that he did not want to set up a state-run program, and so the version that passed the House no longer sets up that state program. It's what we passed 2 years ago, or last year rather, but this year that was a pretty big compromise for us, and I think we're open to further suggestions. The governor talked about his plan working because it coordinated with New Hampshire's state employees and Vermont state employees. Problem is that New Hampshire hasn't passed it, nor are they going to. So his plan doesn't work without that partner. So we're at a little bit of a dead end where his plan is concerned. So I'm hoping that we can come to an agreement on something to help Vermont families.
Will this year be the year for paid family leave?
We'll get it to the governor's desk and work from there.
Battery power, made by Steel, for your landscaping tools. Battery trimmers, blowers, and more starting at just $129.95. Visit steeldealers.com.
Hi, this is Mark Montross with Catamount Realty Group. If you have questions or interest purchasing or selling a condo, Catamount Condo Group is your best resource. We are your local experts and understand what's needed by providing the necessary tools such as 3D virtual tours, videos, professional photography, staging, and more, helping you navigate all your questions and concerns with our one-on-one boutique services. When purchasing and selling a condo, the place to go is Catamount Condo Group.
100 years ago, women fought for and won the right to vote under the 19th Amendment. Today, we're still fighting for equality. At Nettie Steph's, we stand by Planned Parenthood and want to raise $100,000 to support its funding by donating $1 of every sale of this delicious and anatomically correct chocolate. And don't forget the revolution. The famous Bernie bars are always available. Help support Planned Parenthood. Go to nuttystephs.com or visit Nutty Steph's, Exit 9 in Middlesex.
Weather affects everything we do. So why should you wait for the forecast? Local 22 News is the only local news that starts with your forecast first, so you're ready for whatever comes your way. Your forecast first, tonight on Local 22 News.
The last episode before the finale, the top 5 take on the songs of a legend, Elton John. Who will be left standing? American Idol live coast to coast on ABC.
Let's talk about marijuana. The House Committee on Government Ops passed a tax and regulation kind of version last Friday. There's a lot that goes into this, and I imagine this could come down to compromise as well, and it's just now moving through the House. Is this some of the more, when it comes to looking out over the next few weeks, do you have a lot to talk about when it comes to this issue in particular?
There's still quite a bit up in the air on this. So I've been saying all along that the policy needs to drive the timeline on this. The timeline can't drive the policy. This is the first half of the biennium, so if we can't get it all done this year, it can wait. The Senate has passed this bill a number of times. This is the first year that the House has tackled it, and there are a lot of pieces to consider. We're really trying to put a lot of focus into road safety, highway safety, and prevention. Those are two really important pieces if we're going down this path.
The governor is in favor of a saliva test. Do you know how this will shake up? How are the Democrats feeling when it comes to that sticking point?
I think the House Judiciary Committee has spent quite a bit of time trying to look at how to improve road safety. We've been taking a number of steps on that, not just related to marijuana, but but in all sorts of directions. The issue with the saliva test is that we do not yet have a test for impairment. So there is a test that indicates presence, but that has no correlation to
Level of impairment
or any impairment. We've also had, when we've discussed a saliva test on the House floor before, the House has passed some version of saliva testing in past years, but there have been questions on the other kinds of prescribed medications. The problem with the saliva test is you can be taking a prescribed medication, using it as directed. It can even be something that you're allowed to drive with, and it shows up as presence and raises questions during the saliva test. So I think there are some conversations underway. This is a technology that's still under development. So we've put some triggers in saying, yes, we want to use it when there are available tests that actually do what we want them to do, and we need to find other ways right now that are looking at exactly what are tangible ways to help keep impaired people off the roadways, help judge when people are impaired, and keep drivers safe. This is an issue that we're struggling with regardless of whether a tax and regulate system passes or not.
Right. So could there be some version that pass, within the next few weeks, and then we hold off on saliva testing?
I'm just not sure how it's all, because there's saliva testing, there's blood testing, there's whether or not you need warrants to get that blood test, and time factors. There are a lot of different moving pieces in this piece, but I am committed to making sure that anything that moves forward with a really strong highway safety package.
Obviously, a big focus is on opioids. It has been. Just last week, the House passed a bill to increase access to treatment, basically get rid of that prior authorization for some medication, because some insurance companies hold a lot over, what can and cannot be prescribed. Is Vermont making headway when it comes to this epidemic?
I think we are. We were one of the few states that had actually seen a decline in deaths, opioid-related deaths, but one is too many. It's heartbreaking for me to sit down, as I have a number of times, with family members, parents and siblings who have lost somebody to an overdose, and and struggle with that question of how can we do more. So I feel really good about this as a next step, so that when somebody wants treatment, they're able to get it immediately. That it is accessible, that there aren't long waiting lists, that we've created a lot of different paths, either through the ER, through your doctor, or through clinics, to be able to get treatment quickly. And then if you have a private insurance, making sure that this is something that is covered. I don't need prior authorization to go and get a mammogram or to go and have my annual physical. If I need treatment for addiction, I should be able to just go and get that the minute that I'm ready, because we have seen time and time again that there can be a point when somebody is ready to seek treatment, and the treatment has to be available and accessible at that point for the person to continue to be successful.
You had mentioned earlier you had a lot of new members this past session. Are there some topics, are there some bills or overarching themes that had to be tabled, maybe because of other important issues, that you hope next year gets a focus?
Well, I think one of the big ones that comes to mind, it wasn't necessarily something that needed to be tabled, but it was a kind of a 2-year process, was Act 250. So Act 250 turns 50 years old, hard to believe, and while it gets complained about quite a bit, there are some really significant benefits that we've seen, and part of the reason Vermont looks like Vermont and we are able to still enjoy wildlife corridors for nature enthusiasts, for hunters, for hikers is because of Act 250. Part of the reason we can deal with some of the traffic patterns and help manage settlement patterns is because of Act 250 that have really helped to protect Vermont. And so 2 years ago, we started an Act 250 commission, and a group of legislators have gone out to all corners of the state over a period of 18 months, really listening to Vermonters, and they came up with a series of regulations, or a series of recommendations rather, to help take a comprehensive look, because in the 50 years there have been individual layers upon layers of bills, but how this amendment affects this underlying section hasn't been looked at. So I think
2 years is needed when it comes to this.
I think the comprehensive look at Act 250 is really needed, and so so our Committee on Natural Resources has been working hard on that, and hope to move something early next year.
Okay. Appreciate you being here. Good
My
luck
pleasure.
as the session winds down.
Thank you.
We'll be right back on What Matters This Week.